Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 build guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering what is secretly one of the best support characters in Baldur's Gate 3. This character provides amazing support to the party and is also incredibly tanky and difficult to kill, provides excellent control, and does solid melee damage, so you really get to live the dream and do it all at once. I think that this is one of the best characters to play if you're looking for an alternate take on a support character, especially if you are, let's say you're playing co-op with some slightly less experienced friends and you want a build that will allow them to shine and really introduce them to the game in a way that makes them feel powerful, while secretly knowing that you're the one actually doing all the work and winning all the fights, then this is exactly the build for you. This build is understated, but incredibly strong, and provides all the tools that a party needs to be able to win fights very easily. And I think, for that reason, it's also a very good build for a lore-friendly take on Jaheira, playing out exactly like you'd expect her character to play in-game, as a sort of wise mentor passing out support to her party members, but capable of incredible spikes of power when the situation calls for it. Another kind of ridiculous thing about this character is the sheer amount and variety of healing that you're going to have access to. This character can heal allies passively, just by being near them, heal them with an action, heal them with a bonus action, or even heal them with a reaction. This lets you just pass out a tremendous amount of healing in your turn if you need to bring an ally who's taken a lot of damage back to full, but also work healing into your turns no matter what else you want to do. So your whole party is going to be full health much more reliably than with basically any other character in the game at your disposal. I'm using Jaheira as the example character here because, like I said, I think it's very on theme for her, fits her personality, it's a Druid build, so it works extremely well with her theme and character. But if you're building this as a custom character, then the main things that you are going to be looking for from your race selection are, of course, mobility, and also if you can get perception as a bonus skill from your race, then that helps out a lot. So I'm going to recommend a full Wood Elf who gets Perception as a skill and also 35-foot movement speed for this character, but other great options include Halfling, since you'll be maintaining concentration on spells. Halfling's reroll can allow you to do that, or Githyanki, because that also can give you Perception, just using Githyanki's Astral Knowledge, and the bonus once per day Misty Step is very good as well. Despite this being primarily a Druid build, we're actually going to start by taking a level in Paladin. We're going to be taking levels in both classes, and this way we get to have heavy armor proficiency. While this will be a dexterity-based build, there are some heavy armor sets that are very good for us, and there will be times when wearing heavy armor will be better than wearing medium armor, depending on what items we have exactly at our disposal. If you know for a fact that you're going to stick with medium armor throughout the entire game, you can take Druid first. The only real difference is that Druids get to take Perception as a class skill, which can be useful to have in your party, but just for flexibility, I like starting with Paladin so that we can more easily fit this character into whatever party, because we have access to both good medium armor and good heavy armor. It doesn't matter what armors our allies need at that point in the game, we can always wear whichever one they don't want and make the best use possible of our item availability. For our Paladin subclass, we're going to take Oath of the Ancients, and the reason for this is the level 1 ability Healing Radiance. This is an incredible ability, and in my opinion, honestly, one of the most underrated abilities in the game. It is a bonus action for an AoE heal, so it's a pretty large amount of healing just by itself for a bonus action, but it also lasts for 2 turns, meaning you can activate it before combat starts, you can activate it and benefit from it for multiple turns, you can easily use it to bring up downed allies while still taking your entire turn. It has a lot of the strengths of Healing Word, other than the range, or all of the strengths of Healing Word other than the range, and also lasts for multiple turns, and it's one of the best ways in the game to apply the buff on heal items. So I think that this is just an incredible ability to have at our disposal, and we're going to grab it. For our ability scores, we are going to take a very unusual split for a Paladin, because remember, we're sticking mostly with Druid, but even though we're going to be sticking mostly with Druid, we're actually going to de-emphasize Wisdom and emphasize Dexterity, so that we can land our Smite attacks when we get access to those later in the game. This character is going to use Finesse weapons, so you want your Dexterity as high as possible, so that we can make attacks with our Finesse weapons, and also we want our Initiative as high as possible, so we can apply buffs to our allies at the beginning of combat. So for that reason, we're going to take 17 Dexterity, 16 Constitution to help us maintain concentration on our spells, and 15 Wisdom. Then of course we're going to use our ability score improvement to even out these odd numbers. Whenever I suggest this attribute split, I always get people confused in the comments, so just to head off some of those comments, yes, if we could take 3 16s, we would, and it would be better, but we can't, so we're going to take these odd numbers. If it really, really bothers you, you can start with a 12 in strength and do this and then respec to this when you hit level 4, but the benefits of that are so marginal that I recommend just taking the odd numbers and going with it. For here, for your skill selection, there aren't particularly any skills that you need that you can actually select, but if you could get Perception from your race or Sleight of Hand from your background, maybe by taking Urchin as a background, then you can benefit from your high Dexterity and Wisdom with those and have this character provide Perception or Sleight of Hand to your party. Obviously, that's not available to Jaheira, but if you're building this as a custom character, those are great options to allow you to have a little more skill selection. That's all we have to do at level 1, so let's go ahead and move on to level 2. And at level 2, we're going to leave Paladin and go into Druid. This is going to get us access to all of our great support abilities that we're looking for, and since we have the weapon and armor proficiencies from Paladin, we want to make sure that we get access to our best Druid spells, and have higher level spell slots to use with Smite before we actually bother to take Smite. We don't need them early because they're not that much damage. We'd rather get access to good spells, but if you feel like you really want to be maximizing your early game damage, you could take the second level of Paladin right away. For our cantrip selection for Druid, we are going to take Guidance, because of course every party needs guidance, and this is one of the best characters to provide it, both because it's a great support cast, and also because it will synergize with something we're going to be doing later on. And for our second spell selection, there's actually not a lot here that we particularly need. I'm going to recommend taking Produce Flame, just because it can create light and you can set fires with it. We will most likely be using a bow if we want to make a ranged attack, since we have high dexterity, so we don't particularly need a combat cantrip, but Produce Flame's utility is still very strong. Then for our spells, we're going to take Healing Word, which of course will let us heal as a bonus action at long range, so now we have short range and long range bonus action healing. Long Strider, because it's one of the best spells in the game. It's a ritual spell, so it doesn't cost a spell slot. And then for our last spell here, we can either take a powerful utility spell like Enhance Sleep or Create or Destroy Water, or we can take something for combat. Since we will mostly be making attacks for our actual combat contributions at this level, I'm going to recommend that you just take something like Create or Destroy Water, whatever your party needs for utility. But the best combat option is probably Fog Cloud, so you can pick that up as well. This is a no-save blind, so if you can keep enemies trapped in it, you can use it to really lock down enemy actions, as well as give your teammates advantage. If you cast it just before their turn, then they can have advantage on their attacks. Place Fog Cloud so that enemies are on the edge of the cloud so that it'll blind them, but you won't have to move into it in order to attack them. At character level 3, we're going to take our second level in Druid because we want access to our subclass as soon as possible. The subclass that we're going to select might sound a little bit odd for a primarily support character, but gives us a ton that this character needs. We're going to take the Circle of Spores Druid. This gives us two abilities that are very good for this character. First off, we get Symbiotic Entity, which gives us a bunch of temporary hit points based on our Druid level. You get 4 per Druid level, so we're going to end up with a lot of temporary hit points. Combined with our very high armor class from our high dexterity and medium armor, or just wearing heavy armor and using a shield, we're going to be able to have very high AC and very high hit points, so we can keep the Symbiotic Entity operative for much longer, but also multiply the value of those extra hit points and absorb many more attacks for our team, because those attacks will frequently miss. Secondly, Symbiotic Entity increases the damage of our attacks, which is very good because this build will be attacking somewhat frequently, and just acts as basically an extra level to all of our smites. We're going to be making Paladin smite attacks, and the extra d6 necrotic damage isn't quite as good as an extra d8 radiant, but is almost as good as turning every smite from a level 1 smite into a level 2 smite, level 2 smite into a level 3 smite, and so on. The second ability that's really good for us here is Halo of Spores. Not as an offensive ability, although the ability to deal damage with a reaction is still pretty useful. Enemies can negate the damage by making con save. That save won't be very difficult for them to make because our wisdom won't be very high. But the trick with Halo of Spores is that you can use it on anything, not just enemies, and basically get an extra attack as a reaction. What this lets us do is drop a potion, a healing potion, or any kind of potion, using the drop action from our inventory, which doesn't take an action, it takes no time to do, and then break it with Halo of Spores as a reaction. This is a way that we can add healing to our party using our reaction, because if we walk next to an ally, we can catch them in the radius of the dropped potion, or of course set up potions on the ground ahead of time before we start combats, and use our reaction to break them, getting extra heals with an action that we wouldn't normally be using. It's an incredible way to just add utility to your character. I say this frequently, but every character in Dungeons & Dragons has 5 actions every turn of combat. Your action, your bonus action, your concentration, your movement, and your reaction. And this character has spectacular uses for all 5. Our actions, of course, can be attacks or spells. Our bonus actions can be healing or spells or offhand attacks if we're using 2 weapons. Our movement is great for our positioning, of course. We're going to be concentrating on a spell. And now we can use our reaction to heal our allies, or attack our enemies with an opportunity attack, which is an option that no other character in the game gets. For our spell selection at this level, we're going to make sure we have the utility spells that we need for our party. We'll probably want to bring in Create or Destroy Water. It's just so useful to have this available for various encounters and combats, so you may want to prepare it, but you can also just prepare whatever you think you might need. Enhanced Leap is always a great default option, because you can precast this on your whole team before combat to just give them a lot of extra mobility options during combat. That's it for level 3. Let's move on to level 4. And at level 4, we're going to continue to take Druid levels. We could, at this point, take Paladin levels and get Smite attacks, but I really like getting access to level 2 Druid spells, because there are some that are just absolutely fight-winning in the early game. In particular, the one that I'm thinking of is Spike Growth. Spike Growth has no saving throw, so it doesn't care that we only have 15 wisdom at this point. Not that 15 wisdom is terrible, but it is lower than most dedicated casters will have at this stage of the game. But Spike Growth has no saving throw, makes a gigantic area of difficult terrain that damages enemies, and enemies will happily just wander around on the Spike Growth, taking constant damage. There are a ton of fights that this spell will just simply solo, because so many enemies will just walk over it and take 1,000,000 damage, and also it's just very powerful throughout the game. You can also use it to trap enemies next to you, because you're a very powerful melee combatant, so if you walk up to an enemy, cast Spike Growth centered on yourself and that enemy, they have to, if they leave combat with you, they're going to take an opportunity attack and a bunch of Spike Growth damage, and maybe not even be able to get all the way out of the way. So especially if you have some way to become immune to difficult terrain, or you can just jump after them using Enhanced Leap, then that's a very powerful tool for locking down important enemies as well. We're also going to pick up Flaming Sphere, because enemies will often waste attacks against the Flaming Sphere, so it's a great thing to be concentrating on to draw fire from your allies, and will be useful in several combats as well. At character level 5, we're going to go back and grab our second Paladin level to get access to Smite attacks. At this point, we have only second level spells to smite with, but remember that all our smites are improved in damage because we have symbiotic entity damage as well, and we also get access to a fighting style. There are a number of different fighting styles that we could take here that would all be very good. You could take defense just to increase your armor class, which is an excellent option for any character, and if you intend to be dual wielding with this character, because you can either use a shield or dual wield 2 weapons, then this character will want to take defense. You could also take dueling, which is probably a little bit better if you're using a shield and one-handed weapon and want to maximize our damage, But to lean into the support aspects of this character and get to use an ability that I think is severely underrated in Baldur's Gate 3, I'm going to recommend that you take Protection. With a shield, you can then use this to impose disadvantage on an ally within 5 feet as a reaction. Now, obviously, you can't use this in the same turn that you're doing the healing potion trick, but Protection giving disadvantage on attacks against your allies is so powerful and significantly reduces the amount of damage that they'll take. Any damage they do take, you can then heal back up. So it's going to keep your party alive very well. This is a resource-free ability. I mean, it takes your reaction, but you can use it an infinite number of times per day. So you're going to be able to shut down a significant number of attacks every day. You're basically getting Warding Flare from, or improved Warding Flare from level 6 Light Cleric, one of the most powerful class features in the game, just as a fighting style, provided you stay near your allies, which is something you probably want to do anyways, because you're a melee defensive character. We also get a Paladin spell here, and that will let us pick up Bless. While this character will apply Bless to their allies using the buff on heal items pretty frequently, being able to concentrate on Bless is also just very nice. It has a long duration, and you can hit many allies with it without having to spend your healing abilities, so it's just great to have access to this spell as well. Moving on to level 6, we're going to go back and take our 4th level of Druid so that we can get access to a feat. This also, because we're hitting 4th level Druid and have 4 caster levels from our Druid levels and 1 from our 2 Paladin levels, means that even though we don't have 3rd level spells yet, we do have 3rd level spell slots for smiting. So our actual melee damage is quite high at this point in the game because we're able to use very high level spell slots for smiting. In fact, our level 3 spells are going to be used for smiting probably more often than not at this point, because we, unlike most characters, Druid gets its best spells at 4th level rather than at 4th level spells rather than 3rd level spells. So a lot of our best 3rd level spell uses are going to be just for smiting for lots of extra damage. We also get an additional cantrip, so we're going to go ahead and take Resistance here. Resistance is very useful for some dialogue choices in the game. Anytime you have to make a saving throw during dialogue, you can use Resistance, and is also a concentration spell, which will combine with some items that we might want to be using. For our feat, we're just going to take an ability improvement here, and even out these odd numbers. This gets us to 18 dexterity, so we can land our attacks more often, have better AC, go first more often, and 16 wisdom, which will let us both prepare more spells and also land our spells more reliably. While we're mostly avoiding spells that have save DCs, higher wisdom still definitely helps and allows us to land our spells with save DCs that we do want to cast more often. At level 7, we're going to take our 5th level of Druid to get access to 3rd level spells. This gives us Gaseous Form and Animate Dead from our Spore Druid levels, and Animate Dead is a great spell, especially because we will not have high Wisdom, so we can use the Animate Dead summons in order to make a small army of characters to follow us around. I recommend using this for the skeletons. They are both a little bit easier to actually use and a little more resilient, though you can really go all in on zombies as a Spore Druid and just have all of the kinds of zombies running around making more zombies, which, if you can manage it, is definitely fun. So either type of Animate Dead can work. Typically, I think the skeletons are a little bit easier to use, but if you are confident you can land a killing blow, then the zombies can be amazing. For our spells, our level 3 spells, we're going to work 2 more level 3 spells into our rotation, and those are Plant Growth, which again has no saving throw and just quarters enemy movement speed, incredibly crippling to melee enemies, and very powerful spell. This can be used to lock enemies in AoE effects, and does not require your concentration. And even though it does have a save DC, I think Sleet Storm is still just way too good to pass up on. Our save DC is only 1 lower than a caster that's been putting all their points into their casting stat would be at this point, and it still creates difficult terrain on the ice surface. The ice surface is still difficult terrain, and enemies that fall over are just completely ruined, that you just win the fight immediately if they fall over and lose their turn. So Sleet Storm is still just an amazing spell that I highly recommend taking, even with the slightly lower spell DC, and you'll still use it in a lot of combats. Next, we're going to Druid level 6, and we're going to get access to Fungal Infestation, so we can have even more summons running around if we want to. Do bear in mind also that as a Spore Druid, there's nothing saying that you can't Wild Shape. Spore Druids will often want to be in humanoid form, and this Spore Druid even more so, because you have your Paladin Smite attacks, which require you to be in humanoid form to use. But you can still benefit from the invisibility of the Panther form, or the mobility of the Owlbear form, Wild Shaping. So don't forget you have those options, and also, even if your symbiotic entity has been broken, you can still get a whole extra health bar by Wild Shaping and using the Wild Shape form's health bar. So there are definitely times when it's correct to Wild Shape, and keep in mind that you have those options. It can be very easy to forget with a Spore Druid that you are still just a Druid and are able to Wild Shape just as well as any other Druid. Next up, we get access to Druid's 4th level spells, which include some of the most powerful spells in the game. In particular, the one that we're interested in here is going to be Conjure Woodland Being, because Conjure Woodland Being gives you about 5 different spells in one. The Dryad has 3 spells, and these spells use the Dryad save DCs, not your own, so it doesn't matter, again, that we have slightly lower wisdom than a normal spellcaster would have at this stage, and also can summon the Woodwode, who has even more spells, so it's like 5 spells in one. These characters also regenerate and make you immune to your difficult terrain, which lets you travel in your own spike growths and plant growths safely. All of these things together mean that this character can protect their summons while being protected by the summons in turn, and so you get to add a whole ton of power to your party. You can also add a number of other good spells at 4th level here. I recommend taking Freedom of Movement, not to have as an all-day cast, but as a panic button. This character will almost never get stunned or frightened or paralyzed or anything like that, because most of those abilities target wisdom, and we have proficiency in wisdom saves and high wisdom, so we're probably not going to be the victim of getting locked down fully, but our allies might be, and so having this character with the panic button to break them out of those stuns can be extremely helpful. Stun or especially paralyzed or debilitating conditions, so freedom of movement as a panic button is very helpful to have available for your party. Next up, we're going to go to Druid level 8 so that we can get our second feat, and here we're just going to take 2 more dexterity. This increases our armor class if we're using medium armor, but importantly our initiative and our ability to hit as long as we're using a finesse weapon, so we can land our smite attacks much more easily. At this point we now have 5th level spell slots. You won't use those for smites over using 4th level spell slots, because there's no difference between a 4th level smite and a 5th level smite, but it will allow you to upcast lower level spells to higher level versions if you want to, or just cast more of your powerful 4th level spells in a day. Then, at Druid level 9, we get access to 5th level Druid spells, and the really important one here is going to be Conjure Elemental. Not only is Conjure Elemental very powerful in and of itself, but our final character will have access to 6th level spell slots, so we can make the elementals this level, and then next level we'll be able to do the Myrmidon summons. So even though we don't get access to Druid's 6th level spells, we get access to Druid's arguably best 6th level spell, which is the upcasted version of Conjure Elemental. Since this character does not have a lot of lightning or cold damage worked into the character, because of our low wisdom, we're not likely to be using Call Lightning or Ice Storm that frequently. Normally, I would recommend using the Water Myrmidon, but you can use either the Fire or Air Myrmidon and get a lot of benefit out of that. So Conjure Elemental will be a very powerful day-long buff for your party, alongside all of the other summons that you can bring, and the decent damage and amazing healing that your character is dishing out. Finally, at character level 12, we get access to 10th level Druid, and we get Spreading Spores, which is a very powerful ability. Even though this does have a saving throw, it is a bonus action for a big AoE damaging effect, which you can keep enemies trapped in, and just adds a ton of additional damage to your party, especially if you layer it with effects like Spike Growth or Plant Growth to keep enemies trapped in it. Melee enemies can be completely shut down by that combo while constantly taking damage, and they will just be unable to harm you at all if you lock them down, and then spreading spores them, you can just sort of watch them slowly die while you take out higher priority targets. Finally, we get our last cantrip, and unfortunately no True Strike available for this one, but we're just going to take Thorn Whip because sometimes it's very funny. Also worth keeping in mind is that at Druid level 10, you get not only Dilophosaurus form, which is a pretty powerful wild shape form with a decent ranged attack, you also get improved Wild Strike, which lets you attack 3 times in your wild shape form. This means that sometimes even though you mostly are going to want to stick in humanoid form, there are definitely times when you can make use of the powerful melee tools at your disposal by wild shaping, so again, don't forget that you have that available. Alright, that's the build. Let's talk about items. For items for this character gets to use some of the most powerful items in the game better than just about anyone else. Let's first talk about the buff on heal set. Items like the Hellrider's Pride, which when you heal another character, they gain the effect of Blade Ward, and the Whispering Promise, which gives them Bless. These are a very powerful item set, and this character is one of, if not the best character in the game to use them. Because you're so good at passing out healing, you can cause your allies to be constantly buffed with some of the most powerful effects in the game, basically all the time. You have AoE healing from Paladin, you have reaction healing if you use a healing potion, so you can consistently provide these buffs to your allies without even spending too many resources on them. You also are likely to want one of the medium armors that has uncapped dexterity modifier, so that you can increase your AC. Notice that even just with the Yuan-Ti Scale Mail equipped, the lower of these two, Armor of Agility gives 17, but I do like the initiative bonus on this character. We already have 20 AC, which is quite respectable, and that's before equipping a shield or anything else that increases our armor class. So you can benefit quite a lot from one of the uncapped medium armors. There are also good heavy armors for you. Anything that provides you damage reduction, like the Adamantine Splint, will allow you to maintain your symbiotic entity hit points more. Damage reduction basically acts as a multiplier on those temporary hit points, making them last longer and allowing you to do more symbiotic entity damage, and also, of course, stay alive for longer. You also benefit... You also, of course, need a finesse weapon. Since we're a dexterity-based build, you need a finesse weapon, and one stands head and shoulders above the others, I think, for this build, and that is Falar Eluv, because the abilities, alongside the fact that it's a finesse longsword, are just so incredibly powerful. Falar Eluv's Sing or Shriek abilities are both very good. They can give you a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls to your allies, which of course is basically double bless, or Shriek, which increases damage that enemies receive significantly. This character will always be up in the mix and can easily use Shriek, and the way that Shriek works even on honor mode is kind of odd and applies this 1d4 extra damage to just about any damage that you do, including for this character both your melee damage and your symbiotic entity damage in the same attack, so you get a lot of extra damage when you use Shriek and can really power that up. If you are going for the dual wielding build, of course you need 2 light weapons, so just any 2 light weapons for that, but I recommend one-handed and shield. And then for shield, you have a tough choice, I think, between the Sentinel Shield for bonus initiative or Ketheric's Shield for bonus save DCs. Both of these are very good, but this character, I think, probably is just going to want to increase your initiative. We don't rely a lot on save DCs, so I'm going to recommend the Sentinel Shield. Finally, it's very likely that you're going to want the Amulet of Misty Step, because this character doesn't normally get access to Misty Step. Very powerful tool that every character should have available, and this is a free way to do it. There's some amulets that you want, but this is a good way to fit that in. You also, for your boots, are very likely to want the Vital Conduit boots. This is a bug, so I will warn you that this is probably... there's a chance this will be patched out, although it's been in the game basically forever and hasn't been addressed. And is certainly not required if you feel dirty doing it, but when you have the Vital Conduit boots equipped, you can refill your symbiotic entities, you can refill your temporary hit points from symbiotic entity if you've lost some. So you can gain temporary hit points that you may have lost back. this is the only ability that lets you do that. Oops, I didn't actually mean to start a fight there. I was just trying to do damage. Do damage to myself. So let me just reload real quick. And having damaged ourselves, so we are at fewer than our maximum symbiotic entity hit points, you can see that with the Vital Conduit boots equipped, we can use, or any other way of gaining temporary hit points, but this is probably the easiest one, we can use any concentration spell to gain 8 temporary hit points, which actually refills our symbiotic entity hit points. It's super powerful and lets you effectively have infinite hit points, provided enemies never actually break through your symbiotic entity, which they'll be hard-pressed to do because of your very high AC. You can use any concentration spell for this, including cantrips, so you can always refill to full outside of combat, and even in combat you can easily gain quite a lot of hit points by casting things like Spike Growth and Sleet Storm, while also simultaneously passing out heals with your actions and reactions. And to do the reaction thing, all you have to do is just right-click on a potion in your inventory and select Drop, so that it drops to the ground. This doesn't take an action, and then make sure you're standing right near it, and target it with Halo of Spores. This will break it, causing you to be healed. You can do this next to allies as well to catch them in the radius of the healing potion, and so you can actually get AoE heals through this, provided you move near allies. Those heals will pass out the buff on heal item effects, so you can do this and gain a ton of action economy for free, spending only your reaction to do it. So it's just a great trick to keep in mind for this character. Alright, my friends, hope you've enjoyed this look at the Sword Druid, one of the secret best support characters in Baldur's Gate 3. And as always, if you have, feel free to leave a comment and like the video. Both of those things help me out a ton with the algorithm, so I really do appreciate you taking the time to do that. And you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 build guides and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, folks. I'll catch you next time.